Hello dear students, welcome to a brand new session for your mains rapid revision. Now, when we talk about mains itself, one paper that is right now becoming sort of a nightmare for students is your essay paper. It's quite unfortunate because essay paper is something that was considered to be those game changer papers which are there, but right now it is becoming a game changer for the wrong reasons, wherein students are scoring quite abysmal marks. Even if you look at toppers also, you do see the fact that the marks that is being now seen for students when it comes to essays somewhere in the range of the average marks is somewhere in the range of 90 to almost 110, 115 range. It's so shocking because when it comes to even the toppers who ideally would be like in your top 100 or top 200 ranks, you expect their essay scores to be quite different from the rest. But then here what you do observe is that you are seeing a score between 90 to 95 is the common average that is there, 95 to 115, 120, that's it. You do not see exceptionally good scores coming in for essay. And now this has become a matter of deep concern for students. There are students who exclusively write one essay per day and try to practice these things. But what exactly has happened and what exactly are we going to do in these mains rapid revision series for the essays? What I'll tell you today. See, first of all, let's look into what it means. What exactly is this UPSC seeking from an essay paper? Now, the reason why I'm going through this now, a lot of you might be quite familiar with, okay, yeah, UPSC requires us to write 2 essays of some marks and so on and so forth. But be it for any exam, if you do not understand the requirement of the exam, you are going to write things that is convenient to you and not what is something that the exam requires. Okay, so let me just break this first mains rapid revision. This will be a session where I give exactly to you what UPSC requires. Now, we have the syllabus and we have the description of the syllabus with us. But obviously, that is not enough because everyone has the description. Then why are we not doing things according to the descriptions? Which means I'll break it down to you as to what exactly UPSC requires from us. And thereafter, I'll tell you as to what I can provide for you. Now, when I'm saying I can provide to you, this comes from the years of experience of training students for essays. I personally, whenever I have written my mains examination, I have scored scores of 152, 147 and at a certain time 158. These scores for your UPSC essay. This is the reason why. Added to that, my grounding in literature is what I believe qualifies me to help you out with this paper. So, let's go into the details of it. Now coming into what UPSC seeks from this. Let's first go very plainly into the syllabus part of it. What exactly does UPSC seek from us? UPSC seeks to us or asks us to write an essay wherein you have to keep very closely to the subject of the essay, to arrange the ideas in an orderly fashion, to write concisely, and to have effective and exact expression. See, on the outset, it looks like a GS question where you have some terms and we are like, yeah, okay, fine, all these terms are very interchangeable. It means all the same. But is that right? No, it doesn't mean all the same. Let's try to understand what exactly UPSC requires from us, and trust me, once I tell you this and then once I tell you what the program will be giving to you, and I'll also tell you as to what students are doing these days that are not letting them get good marks for essay. So that if you are one of them, you can have a course correction. Let's look at the first thing. You have to keep closely to the subject of the essay. Now, this is something that is quite misinterpreted. See, UPSC wants you to stick to the subject. Stick to the subject means what? For example, if they are asking some topic about if a certain topic is given about the past, or if a certain topic is given about forests, or about climate change or artificial intelligence, UPSC wants you to stick to the subject of the essay means that you cannot keep mentioning or you cannot keep or base your entire essay on a totally different dimension. Which means, then if they are asking education is the most important tool for child development, if this is a topic that is there, the point is, if topic is given education is the most important tool for child development, you can counter that opinion. You can say, no, it is not just the most important, but you cannot base your entire essay and give the impression to the examiner that you have strayed away from the topic. Got it? So this is of prime importance. Now, one point when I'm saying this is of prime importance is, see, why is that a problem? The problem is basically, let me just take you through how this happens. When UPSC sets some questions as essay topics and it's given to you to write, what is then expected after that is the examiners also do have a brainstormed version of what all points could be included. So obviously, if a topic does come, education is the most important tool for child development. They do, or they can still brainstorm the idea that, okay, let's counter the idea that it might not be the most important. Maybe there is health, maybe there is mental development. These are all also important. But when you base your entire essay on a totally different dimension, and maybe because you have prepared on health and you decide, like in the first 3 paragraphs itself, I'll say that, no, let's keep education over there. Let's focus on health, which is there. What happens is the points you write and the dimensions you bring out are totally different from what they have brainstormed as essential points for that essay. Which means, from my understanding and talking to UPSC people who've been in the evaluation and things, what I can figure out is, UPSC, when they put marks for your essay, there is a base mark that you get for adhering to the topic and so having a minimal idea. Like, for example, you have minimal content, minimal dimensions, minimal adherence to the topic. You have written fairly without spelling mistakes and punctuation mistakes and grammar mistakes, etc. You get a base mark. Now that base mark will vary each year, but you do get a base mark which is there. And thereafter, whatever is your extra mark comes from how subjectively that person feels about your essay. Now let's assume that UPSC puts, now this is not the assumption, you have 250 marks for the essay, 125 marks for each essay. Ideally, to get like a really good score, and let's assume that we are doing these sessions to get a score of 140 plus. Okay, if you have to get a score of 140 plus for your essay, you have to break this down into, for example, ideally at least you should get 70 marks for one, maybe 65 to 70 marks for the other. This should be the range in which you should function. Got it? Now, based on what I've understood, what happens in the marking for UPSC essays, when you adhere minimally to the points mentioned, that is, you are ensuring that you are keeping closely to the subject, you are not deviating far. When they ask you about education, you do mention about health, but then you do not make your entire essay about health, which is there. When you do that kind of a minimal adherence, where you have done your, maybe the spelling, the punctuation, the grammar is adhered minimally, you do not, make blunders out of there, you do not misinterpret. Sometimes people cannot understand the topic and then they write absolutely different stuff from what is expected. If you've done any of those, like if you've adhered to these very minimal requirements which is there, you will see that your score somewhat starts from, then they will grant you something like a base score. And that base score per essay, now let's assume, for example, could be somewhere in the range of your 45 to 50 marks. Now, this is all assumptions. There is it's assumptions based on patterns that I've collected over the time. We've seen as an institute also, we've seen over the time. That is where we've understood this, where you can see that. So, if you have a base mark which is 45 to 50, then how do you reach to that 65 or 70 marks per essay? See, this is where you have the subjective criteria, and the subjective criteria is where what gets you that plus 20 or 25 marks which is there. Now, our botheration initially is not about the plus 25 marks, but the first criteria, which is at least getting the base mark. When you do not adhere to the topic, what happens is you end up scoring less in the base mark itself, and that becomes a problem. Got it? So, to keep closely to the subject of the essay, to arrange their ideas in orderly fashion. See, when I say orderly, students understand it in different ways. See, what might be order for you in your head, it would be very clear, it would be in a very picture perfect manner. But order ideally means that, this is always a test that I use with my students. Once I read your essay, if I'm not able to see your brainstorming thing, if I'm not able to chart how a student has thought through that entire thing, then I call you, that essay is not written in an orderly manner. Orderly means not in one very neat manner and going to the next. Order is primarily for the thought process over there. Order is related to the thought process, because if the thought process is not clear, what you end up with is a very disorderly. So what happens over here is, if the thoughts are not arranged in a clear manner, that will get through to the examiner very clearly. Because see, now for example, you start off with the introduction, you are giving some pointers over there, then you are quickly moving to some other area which you find very important. For example, we start talking about the education and we say that, okay, education is so and so. And then suddenly you start mentioning about the different government schemes that the government has done. See, in your head, it would be like, yeah, okay, education, I spoke. Then I started thinking about the government. But and then after the government, you may come about and say the benefits of it. Don't you think it would make much more sense if the benefits of education were mentioned first, so that it becomes clearer to the examiner? Okay, yeah, education is this, education has such benefits, and because education has such benefits, the government is doing several things to promote it. This is something that you will not be able to see while you write it. That is a very flawed idea, wherein when you write it, when we write our essays, we are engrossed in the process. We will never be able to see if our thought process is clear. But this is where, if you are studying by your own and you are having no clear judgment about if your essay is going well, the best thing is you send it to someone, a neutral person, ask them to read the essay. If they are able to clearly move from one thought or one concept to another, then you've written it in an orderly fashion. So understand this. This is another test for it. Then as we move forward to write concisely, that is, write concisely means what? Does it mean that you just say a point and leave it out there? No. Write concisely when UPSC means, they are saying that you have to have, for example, you want to convey a point. Like, I want to convey the idea that education actually creates a space where gender inequality will be eliminated. This is my point. Now, I can say this and say that education helps to remove gender inequality. Okay. Now, this is in itself, it's a point. But then how? I cannot leave it open-ended over there, because what is this entire essay about? You are dealing with something where I am trying to tell to the examiner, convince them of some idea that I am having. So, if I have to convince them, if I have to convince you that, okay, education will remove gender inequality, will I just say, yeah, okay, yeah, I know it, education will remove gender inequality, you please believe it? That will not be the case, right? I will sit and I'll tell you, see, when you educate people, when you educate men and you educate women, people are aware of the social conditioning that they go through. People are aware of such evils like patriarchy, and they try to get over it so that, they see what is the impact of such evils on the society. Got it. This is where you have to, where it actually helps to remove gender inequality. One other aspect would be when you educate a woman and she gets a job and she becomes financially independent. That also eliminates gender inequality. But will it be clear to you if I just don't say it? No. So don't assume that the UPSC examiner is also a UPSC aspirant. The UPSC aspirant knows everything with relation to how one thing will impact another. But the UPSC examiner who's sitting over there is not going to have that well-rounded, or whatever point you are trying to say, they might not have that entire conviction over there, which means you will have to reach out and you will have to say it in a clearer manner. This is concise. Concise is commonly misjudged by a lot of aspirants to just be something that is simple. And when I say to students, write concisely, the meaning is not write in simple languages. That is a different thing. You have to write in simple languages. Write concisely means you have to get to the point. You have to explain the point in clear cut fashion. Okay. So this is more of clarity. Then effective and exact expression. That is another term mentioned. Effective and exact expression means what? See, this entire essay itself is a method of expressing your ideas. Okay. Now you can express ideas in several ways. You can express ideas like, I know a lot of people who want to tell something out, who want to teach something out, but then what would happen is they would just say a lot of things and expect the other person to understand. But here UPSC is saying you have to be effective and you have to be exact. Effective means, see, when I started taking up this session, I initially just started saying that, okay, about essay, you have to have closer to the subject, etc. But then suddenly I brought in an example over there. What did I say? I said, okay, for example, take the topic, the education topic that I mentioned. Why did I use that tool? I used that tool so that you guys who are hearing get that idea clearly. As in, like, when I'm saying that, okay, this is what educate, this is what is it. So if you're moving away to health, you are moving away from the topic. I am trying to convince you using that example. This is much more effective than just giving you out and saying that, okay, please, you listen to this. This is what you have to do. So this is exactly what UPSC is saying. So when in an institute or in any place, they tell you to write, or they ask you to, include examples. So when they ask you to write examples, I've seen students just fill in random things, random examples, just so that they know something, they'll just fill it, random statistics. How will that anyway be helpful? It is not even contributing to the essay on one hand. On the other hand, it is actually creating quite a confused mind to the mindset, to the examiner, as to what we intend is not even clear to them. So when you are asked to write examples, you have to keep in mind your example should substantiate a point that you've written, not the other way around. You cannot base your entire essay just by saying, like, for example, if I want to convince someone that education has removed or has led to removal of gender inequality, I have to convince them of the entire process and then give them an example of maybe, for example, in Nigeria, where you have Boko Haram, that is kidnapping girl students from the school. And they have so many voluntary organizations that bring up, or they try to put up your schools over there, and they specifically educate the girl child over there so that they can escape this entire thing. Now, why do they do that? See, that is a mission that is taken. I will have to take that example, and if I want to write it over here, I will have to write it in a manner that actually supports my point. That says that, okay, they're doing this, so it is something that is proven that if you want to get rid of such gender inequality things, you can actually use education through it. Now, my point is, what do I do instead? I've seen students who would know so many examples because, come on, throughout 1 year, you're seeing current affairs. You have so many different ideas coming in your mind. You base your entire essay on examples, which means that instead of writing education will remove gender inequality or education will get rid of gender inequality, you just mention the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Andolan, or you mention this Boko Haram thing and you just leave it out there. But is it effective? No, that is also not effective. Because effective here means effective to convince a point. And what is exact expression? Exact expression is where if you're going beyond the word limit, if you're going beyond or if you are trying to bring in words which are not quite familiar, if you are using very complicated vocabulary and all, that will function against you. Because exact primarily over here means your word limit, your grammar, handwriting, spelling, all of that becomes important in this part. Once this is done, and this is what UPSC requires from you. So I have just broken down the syllabus into what UPSC requires from you. And because this is the requirement, why in the first place understand why is UPSC doing this? We have such 4 mains papers. We have so many answers that we are writing. Despite all that, we still have an essay paper where we have to write almost what you can say 2 essays with almost 250 marks in a span of 3 hours. Each essay is 1200 words. Why do we have to do this? We have to do this because as a civil servant, you are expected to have certain qualities. You are expected to have a certain clarity of thought. Now, we might be studying 4 papers in our GS, and then we do this essay, and then we have an optional. But I want you to recollect the fact that once all this is done and dusted and you find yourself in the rank list and you go to LBSNA, one of the things that come back to you again over there is your essay. They make you write essays. There are people who you have full-fledged competitions to judge who writes the best essays. The topics might be of administration or economy or political science, but then the idea is you still have to write essays. That's primarily because, and this is a very important thing, it's something that you have to understand even if you are not writing essays, because we all read essays a lot. Wherein, for example, if you take a newspaper today, you open the editorial page, you will read an essay which is there. You have an entire half page contributed for an essay. So this is where you have to understand why or what exactly UPSC expects from you. So they gave the syllabus. I broke down the syllabus. Now I'll tell you what is the ulterior motive of it. The ulterior motive of it is a civil servant who's able to observe an issue or observe a topic from different angles. And once you get these different angles, you have to stick upon one argument that you have, or you have to stick upon one idea that you have. You've seen the issue from all these sides, and then you have your own opinion about it. And then you have your own opinion, not just in your mind, but you have to express it and you have to convince the other side that this is what is right over here. From very simple things like maybe taking a decision if a person has to be given a certain tender or a certain auction or not, to very big decisions as to what schemes have to be launched in the country. All of these things run based on analysis of an issue from all the different sides. You analyzing it in your mind is one aspect. You analyzing it in your mind and putting it down onto paper and convincing another party is a tool of a bureaucrat that is being utilized by all the other machinery. For example, if you take a politician, if you take any other members of the executive, a bureaucrat is who guides them in all these processes. So you are basically judged on those things, which means what you are going to do in your essay paper is something that is going to be a test of how well you can see an issue and you can express an issue in proper words. This is why it is important. This is why it's crucial. So now let's see what exactly UPSC has mentioned and asked us to do certain things. But even if UPSC had not mentioned this, if we had to write an essay ideally, what would be the situation of it, or what could be the different criteria for it? Let's try to observe that. See, what we should ideally give. So we've seen UPSC's requirement. We actually have to give a very formal literary piece. See, what exactly is an essay? An essay is basically a literary piece. What is a literary piece? You have, for example, your short story, your poem, your your précis. All of these are literary pieces. Literary piece means or literary work. Why? Because you are writing that and you are conveying some idea through it. So essay is also a literary work, wherein it can be a formal essay or an informal one. But here, especially, we're talking just about the formal essay, because we are required to write, we are required to see an issue, and we are required to write it in utmost seriousness. So when I'm saying seriousness, it's not like you have to breathe in air and you have to write. The idea is what? When I'm saying seriousness, the idea is that you cannot be informal about it. You cannot say, yeah, so I think this is right because I have felt that way. No, that is a very informal way. You talk like that to people you know. Here, you do not know the examiner, and the examiner expects a certain sense of formality here. So you are not asked to write it in, for example, in some places students ask me, can I write examples from my own life? Yes, write examples from your own life, but it should not be in a way that you just assume certain facts and you write an entire one page about that thing. You can mention okay, this value is important, but that cannot be repeated throughout the essay. For example, if they're talking the topic's about a value, every other time you cannot say, so I uphold values of honesty, I uphold values of that. You cannot keep saying that. You cannot keep talking in the essay in your perspective in that manner. You cannot bring yourself over there. So this is the first thing. So it has to be formal. It cannot, and this is for the same reason why you cannot have these, informal tools that you use. For example, some students ask me, can I draw diagrams in essay? Only if absolutely necessary should you be drawing diagrams. For example, you are explaining something with relation to a map of India, and then you have to use that visual aid to get that, so that the examiner gets all. For example, you want to talk about all the borders of India which is there. You're writing an internal security topic and you have to mention the borders of India. So at that point, instead of just writing the India-Myanmar border or the India-Bangladesh border, India-Sri Lanka border, if you do have a visual aid, it will be helpful. But other than that, I've seen students use very irrelevant flow charts, irrelevant spike diagrams which are there. What happens when you do that is, it ruins the formal nature of the essay and it will not work in your favor. Okay, so just like you jut in diagrams into your GS answers, don't try to jut in unwanted diagrams into your essay paper, because that will ruin and that will clearly dilute the formality of the paper. So essay is a formal literary piece. And these requirements that I've put over here is something that is being followed by all over the world, world-class institutions like your University of Cambridge, Duke University, etc. They have given this criteria as to what they check. And very so, what happens is, the people who go to check your UPSC essay also are trained and are looking forward for these aspects. So just hear me out over here. So you should have, first thing itself, it's a formal literary piece. So one more point to be added when I'm saying it's a literary piece is the fact that any literary piece has a very coherent structure. So when I'm saying coherent structure, it primarily means that if you are given a topic, you have to, now let's take, for example, a short story. You have to write a short story. How will you go about it? Will you just start with the conclusion? No. You will start, maybe even if you start with the conclusion, you will take the author back, or not the author, take the reader back to the original thing which is there. So in this manner, understand that even an essay has a clear structure. And what is the structure of an essay? I can easily break it down into 3 parts, which is intro, this part you all know, and the third part, which is your conclusion, which is there. But what is the middle thing? There is an intro, there is a conclusion, and the third part, which is there, is your argument. Now, when I'm saying argument, don't think that you have to go all against the topic. That is not the idea of argument. The word meaning of argument is trying to convince someone of some opinion that you have. Got it? So, understand the structure that you have to follow in an essay is intro, argument, and conclusion. And this argument is somewhat also defined as body by a lot of people. I use the word argument because you have to clearly get the requirement of what they mean. Okay? And when I'm saying argument, what exactly is the argument over here? Argument clearly means that, see, when I have to argue about something, I want to say that there is, for example, let's say your RBC, which is there. Okay, RBC is the best cricket team in IPL, which is there. I want to convince someone of this. If I want to convince someone that RBC is the best cricket team, do I just keep saying RBC is the best cricket team? RBC is the best cricket team. I cannot keep saying that. I'll have to first say, okay, I have to say RBC is what? Then I'll have to say, okay, based on one criteria, maybe, for example, take the number of runs that they've scored, then come about the team that is there, if they have got any cups, if at all. Now, I know, all jokes aside, if I had to convince someone of something like this, I will divide that entire thing into different parts, right? Then I'll say, okay, based on this, they are performing so well, so this means they are good. Then I'll take a next criteria. So I'll divide that entire argument into parts and then each try to convince the person of each and every part which is there. At the end of which they have to either agree to me or they have to counter my argument. Got it? So this is about a very informal thing. Now think about any of the topics that we have. Let's say joy is the simplest form of gratitude. This is a topic given to you. I know it's a complex topic, but understand, joy is the simplest form of gratitude. If I had to convince someone that, okay, yeah, joy is the simplest form of gratitude, I'll have to first tell them what are all the forms of gratitude? What are all the forms in which I can express it? And how is it that joy is so simple, or joy is the basic form of gratitude? So I'll have to give points. I have to say joy is the simplest form of gratitude because it can be easily expressed. Joy is the simplest form of gratitude because that is something that a lot of people have very difficulty to express. But the moment you express it, it convinces, or it makes the entire relationship much more easier. Joy need not always. Now, for example, if I have another opinion which says that, okay, yeah, joy is a form of gratitude, but it's not the simplest form, then I'll have to raise points which says otherwise. The entire idea is, whatever opinion I hold, I will have to break it down. This is one point where students ask me, if I'm having an opinion totally against the topic, then what do I do? Wherein now the topic they've given is joy is the simplest form of gratitude. But you strongly feel joy is not the simplest form of gratitude. In fact, joy is not a form of gratitude also. This is your opinion. Now this is risky. Why? Because you can hold that opinion and you can write the essay also on it. But then what does that make you? It makes you a civil servant who is not able to see the other side of things. Every issue which we have will have grey areas, will have different dimensions which is there. When you keep on arguing on one side, and this is not a debate, this is an essay. So when you argue on one side and you completely avoid the other part and you're not mentioning anything about it, it gets across to the examiner that you're quite stubborn and rigid and you're not able to see the other side of things. And that will become problematic. So this is where institutes and teachers and all guide students and say that, see, you have a balanced approach. You write both factors. Even if you feel strongly about one, make sure you bring in the other parts. Got it? So here you can say it's a well-defined line of argument with each stage clearly marked is what you have to have next. Then come into something that our next session will be entirely based on. It's called as the different dimensions to see the topic in. The different dimensions to see the topic in. We will discuss more about it, but as of now, understand every issue that we have, as I had just told you, can be seen in different perspectives. This is like how I feel like, on the way it's raining. And then I feel like, oh my God, it's such a bad thing. Why is it raining over here? There is block, there is traffic jam happening. There is all these issues happening. I'm going to get late to the place I have to reach. All these issues are there. But at the same time, this rain which is over here is something that your farmers need. You need water in your groundwater aquifers. You can see a whole lot of positivity, and if you are maybe a school child, then you see it fully as positive because you might get even a holiday. So the same issue can be seen in two different perspectives. If I sit hard and think, I can find even more perspectives related to it. Now the point is, this is what is required of you. It's a very simple thing. We'll go into that in detail because I'll tell you why this is the most, out of all the criteria that I'm going to mention, this becomes the most important criteria, and this is the one major reason why some students are in your average score of your 90 to 115 and some students are catapulting to your 130, 140 plus. It's a very rare score, but they're getting the score. So what exactly is happening over there, we can see when we go into this dimensions part. Then coming into appropriate, economical and accurate illustration. Appropriate, economical and accurate illustration is something very similar to what we earlier spoke, which is exact expression. Evidence of independent thinking of the subject. Now, when I'm saying independent thinking, don't think like, for example, you have to put in your own full-fledged opinion. That when you write maybe like your college level essay or something, there you can look forward for that. But here, what is more important is, even if it is some, like you've read it in a newspaper, for example, it's a quite unpopular opinion, but the idea that, for example, we have something called as an earth hour. Okay. And people normally suggest earth hour as a very important awareness tool to combat your climate change related activities. It has been very famous. Now, if you do feel an opinion that such kind of superficial make-do things actually drive away the attention from climate change related activities. One thing is, for example, there is a proven record that when earth hour happens, this is under the assumption that I hope you all know what earth hour is. If you do not know, this is your time to go and search for what it is. Okay. So if there is a common idea that when earth hour happens and for 1 hour you are switching off your light and your electronic devices, at that particular point, there is so much more emissions coming out into the universe. That's primarily because when people have all these lights off, they move on to their mobile phones, they move on to some other modes of they can entertain themselves. And that actually leads to a lot of climate change or carbon dioxide emissions. Now, this is something that is being, and it's in the last few years, if you look, people send their emails, sit and do their messaging. Each email you send based on the server and everything that is being used, you are basically releasing some micro milligrams of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So, this is all a concept that is there. Now, on the other hand, if you do feel that this is a very strong idea, it is creating awareness and all, you can go for that. But what if you do have an opinion, quite an unpopular one, but still an opinion of yours, that this is all good, but we need something more solid. We cannot just have these, very decorative awareness measures. We have to have something deep that actually leads to a behavioral change in people. Now, you are of the opinion that earth hour is not creating a behavioral change. Now, this is an independent thinking that you've had. Maybe now this is an independent thinking, you've read it in a newspaper given by any critic. When you use it in that sense, wherein because a lot of times students write down these things from their editorials, but I've never seen students actually use them in their essays. When, for example, if someone has said, Suhasini Haidar, or someone has said something about international relations, about climate change out there, when you quote them, you either write their name and quote, or you say it, or you write it in a manner that is, that you, if you do feel it, you express it in that manner which is there. If you don't do that, again, it's not something that you will be penalized for. But on the other hand, that 20-25 marks of subjective marks which is there, that might fall down a little bit. Got it? So if you do have independent thoughts, which are not radical and against the state, you have to be within your boundaries when you do this. You cannot go against the state. You cannot go against the constitution which is there. Within the boundaries of your common rationality and sensibilities, you can do it. Got it? So that is your, appropriate, your evidence of independent thinking about the subject. Finally, the next point is your crisp expression. Now, this is something in the last 2 years, this is quite, even previously we knew this was happening, but then we saw the evidence in the mark sheet where students exceeded the word limit. UPSC actually cut their marks. At not 5 or 10 marks, I've seen mark lists where at least 20 marks of the student is cut because they have crossed or they went above and beyond some criteria that is being given. So crisp expression is important. Now, I know you will not be sitting and counting the words, but then if you are a UPSC aspirant, you know the UPSC size sheet which is there. You know based on your handwriting, what is expected of you is anywhere between somewhere around 7 to 12 pages. That is based on your handwriting. So ensure that, have at least a rough idea, count the words in one line, count the paragraphs and then make a calculation. Have a rough idea, because when you go beyond, at this time and age, they are penalizing you. So crisp expression. Then finally, your spelling, punctuation and grammar. I've seen a lot of places people say UPSC requires you to write simple language. Simple language is not equivalent to writing with grammar mistakes and writing with spelling mistakes. I don't know at what point we try to equate these both, but that is a very wrong idea. Simple language means, for example, if I want to tell you something, I use words which are normally there in a local communication, normal communication which is there. But spelling mistakes, punctuation mistakes, grammar mistakes, and that not one or two, but recurrent grammar mistakes will be quite detrimental to your marks. So this is a reality. If you are, be it your spelling, punctuation, some students have handwriting that is quite illegible. All of these things can work against you. So these are all the things that we have to ideally give from our side. So now if this is also clear, then we come into as to what is happening right now. So we have to ideally give this. But then why are we not having good scores in essay right now? Now let's break it down into very simple few points. And those simple few points is what we'll be focusing on each of our sessions which is there. The first point being, of the time, what has happened is, UPSC asks you to write different dimensions. Students do bring in different dimensions. But what happens is, they stick to something that, for example, you all would have heard that common code which is there. Social, political, economical, legal, psychological, environmental, spectral, pastel. These are all the different code words that are there. When someone says, okay, you do not have enough dimensions, we just open this book of political, social, economical, legal. In that, we try to find out varieties, ethical, scientific, technological. We find different dimensions over here, but then we still stick to that bounded nature. Now, over the time, you have to understand what might have been practiced by few students is now something that is there. Almost all places when students want to write an essay, they go back to this criteria which is there. Which means what? If the general average is writing these things, don't you think that general average marks is what you will also be getting if you follow that? Because the UPSC examiner has read it several times in that same correction spree itself. They've read the same thing, social, political, economical. Maybe the points you write under it are different, but still you are stuck in that dimension cage that you've been trained with. So this becomes a problem. First thing is dimensions. The second most important thing that I have heard students say is UPSC essay paper has changed. UPSC is now asking, and this is again a term that I have an issue with, UPSC is asking philosophical essays. See, we have this general nature when we don't understand things, we say, oh, okay, you're saying philosophy. Why are you saying this philosophy? But understand, not all the things that we don't understand are philosophy. UPSC tends to ask abstract essays these days. So when I say abstract essays, it's not that the topic or the, for example, it deals, or the topic deals with quite abstract concepts like joy, victory, gratitude, failure, past. These are not concepts that we study in our GS3. Like, for example, when I say GDP, you know the value of it, you know the criteria of it, but you know why GDP is changing, why it is not happening. But we've not sat back and thought, okay, what is happiness to us? What is success to us? What is failure to us? This is the reason why when we are forced to think about it in the UPSC examination hall, we find it to be quite daunting and we find it to be philosophical and abstract and everything. So again, students not trained in that will also suffer. Then coming into the third point, see, even those essays which are not abstract are getting asked. But if you are not able to identify what is the core concern, like, let me ask you, there was one question which says, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. See now, hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Rocks the cradle is the mother, rules the world. So the entire idea, if you don't get the crux of it, you will again see that as a very abstract thing. So what happens is, in a lot of times, students are not understanding the topic. And for example, last year, there was a very simple topic which says that forests are the perfect units or something about economic efficiency. See, now this is a very normal term which is there, very normal statement. But then if you cannot see why this topic is being asked or how to break down this topic, you will end up writing so much about forest. You will write like, okay, forest is giving us so much of wealth, forest is giving us ecosystem services, this. You will write all that. And then you will say that, okay, all this is also wealth. But that is not the question. The question is, forests are the perfect examples of economic efficiency. Where is the word efficiency featured in your essay? So this is something that we used to do even in our graduation, where something that is being asked to us. If they ask about the cow, we will speak about the cow. Then we'll speak about the tree on which the cow is tied, the rope on which the cow is tied, the entire village in which the cow is situated. That is where what happens is, if we do not know much about the cow, we fill in with these details. And once we start filling in with the details, the examiner feels that you've completely deviated from what is being asked. So, the third point comes understanding. Now, over the next few sessions that I've planned, these will be short sessions. What I am planning to do is, I will be taking up each of these aspects, dimensions, abstract topics which we have, understanding. Through the time, what we're going to do is, ideally, from the time span between your 2014 to your 2023, this is the age, this is the time that we have, 2014 to 2023. I'll be taking up topics, I'll be taking up concepts which are there and trying to help you understand what I mean with each of these things, and I'll help you train yourself into that. So when I'm saying dimensions, I can easily say, okay, your pastel is wrong. But then again, that is not convincing. If pastel is not, in the first place, pastel is not wrong. You can use pastel. But it's just that when everyone uses it, it's quite boring. Even for an examiner to sit and read it, it becomes a daunting task. So this is where you will need different dimensions. And then the next point comes, okay, if you need different dimensions, how can you think of different dimensions? And then we will try to almost exclusively focus on for you it is your philosophical essays, for me it is the abstract essay topics which are there. The idea is at the end of this mains rapid revision essay series, which will be few short series which are there, you should have a grip on, if I give you a philosophical topic, you cannot sit baffled. You will have to break it down into the terms that you know, and that is what we aim to achieve in these sessions. So I hope that is clear. So wait for the next session until we meet next time. Take care and happy learning.